There are moments in life that do not break loudly. They happen quietly, invisibly, almost politely. An invitation that never comes. A group that slowly stops replying. A friendship that grows cold without explanation. A room full of people where somehow, you still feel alone. And the most painful part is not always the rejection itself. It is the question that follows afterward. What is wrong with me? Some people carry that question for years. They replay conversations at night. They overanalyze their personality. They blame their appearance, their emotions, their silence, their honesty. They begin shrinking themselves just to feel accepted somewhere. What they never realize is that sometimes exclusion is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. There was a season in one person's life where everything felt like abandonment. Friends disappeared. Plans happened without them. Messages became shorter. People who once felt close suddenly acted distant. At first, they fought to hold on. They tried becoming easier to love. Less emotional. Less needy. Less themselves. They laughed harder at jokes that hurt them. Stayed quiet when disrespected. Pretended everything was fine while anxiety quietly consumed them from the inside. Because loneliness can make people tolerate things they should never accept. The fear of being left behind is powerful. It can convince someone to remain in spaces that slowly destroy their peace. Not through one dramatic tragedy, but through small daily betrayals against their own soul. The human mind was never designed to constantly feel unwanted. When someone repeatedly feels excluded, the brain begins turning inward. It creates stories. Maybe I'm boring. Maybe I'm too broken. Maybe nobody truly wants me around. Those thoughts become dangerous because the mind repeats what it hears most often. Eventually, sadness no longer visits temporarily. It moves in permanently. The mornings become heavier. Simple tasks feel exhausting. Even smiling begins to feel like work. Depression rarely arrives as chaos. Sometimes it arrives as emptiness. A numbness so deep that even hope feels distant. And anxiety makes it worse. Because while depression whispers, nothing matters, anxiety screams, everything could go wrong. Together, they trap a person between hopelessness and fear. But life has a strange way of revealing truth later. Sometimes the people who excluded you were never aligned with your peace to begin with. Sometimes the conversations you begged to be part of were filled with negativity behind closed doors. Sometimes the approval you chased would have cost your self-respect. Sometimes the door that closed was leading somewhere dark. Yet pain blinds people from seeing protection. A storm cloud never announces that it is saving you from the wrong road. It only looks like disappointment at first. There comes a moment in healing when a person slowly notices something unexpected. Distance created clarity. Without constantly trying to impress others, they finally heard their own thoughts. Without toxic company, their nervous system became calmer. Without fake friendships, they learned the difference between connection and attachment. That realization changes everything. Because being included everywhere is not success. Peace is success. Mental freedom is success. Sleeping without anxiety in your chest is success. There are people surrounded by crowds who still feel deeply lonely because none of those connections are genuine. And there are people sitting alone in silence who are finally beginning to heal. Healing often starts where performance ends. The moment someone stops begging for acceptance, they begin discovering their worth. Not everyone will understand your heart. Not everyone will value your presence. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. And that is okay. Flowers do not beg people to notice them. They simply bloom where they are planted. Human beings forget that worth is not measured by popularity. Some of the strongest people in the world walked alone before they found the right environment to grow. Isolation can feel cruel in the beginning, But sometimes it becomes the space where transformation happens. Because pain forces reflection. And reflection creates awareness. Many people only discover their unhealthy patterns after losing the people they depended on emotionally. That loneliness becomes a mirror. It reveals how much validation controlled them. How deeply fear shaped their decisions. How often they abandoned themselves to avoid abandonment from others. The truth hurts at first. But truth also heals. Little by little, life begins rebuilding them differently. They start enjoying their own company. Their thoughts become softer. Their nervous system stops living in survival mode. They no longer panic when someone pulls away. Because they finally understand something important. Rejection is not always evidence of unworthiness. Sometimes it is redirection. Sometimes life removes people because they can no longer accompany the version of you that is trying to grow. Growth changes priorities. The things that once entertained you begin exhausting you. The people you once chased begin feeling draining. The chaos you once tolerated begins disturbing your peace. And slowly, a painful chapter begins making sense. Those lonely nights taught emotional strength. Those silent mornings taught self-awareness. Those moments of exclusion taught independence. The same experience that once felt like destruction became preparation. Preparation for healthier relationships. Preparation for inner peace. Preparation for becoming someone emotionally stronger than before. One day, they looked back and realized something shocking. The moments they cried over being left out were actually the moments life was pulling them away from what would have eventually broken them completely. Not every closed door is rejection. Some doors close because your future cannot survive inside that room. And maybe that is the message someone desperately needs to hear today. If people walked away from you, if you were excluded, if you felt forgotten, do not automatically assume life is punishing you. Sometimes life is protecting your mental health, protecting your peace, protecting your future. Some connections only survive when you betray yourself to keep them. And losing those connections may be the beginning of finally finding yourself again. You are not behind because you are alone. You are not worthless because some people overlooked you. You are not unlovable because certain hearts could not recognize your value. The right people will never require you to destroy yourself for acceptance. And until those people arrive, your relationship with yourself matters most. Learn to sit with your own thoughts gently. Learn to speak to yourself kindly. Learn to stop measuring your worth by who includes you. Because the moment you stop chasing places where you are barely tolerated, you create space for places where you are deeply valued. And perhaps one day, you will thank life for every invitation you never received. Because what once felt like abandonment was actually rescue in disguise.